Hi, this is Tom. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I'd like to start by saying thanks for giving my podcast a shot. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen, especially with the wealth of Dungeons and Dragons related content out there. My hope is that I can provide something a little bit different here, that will set this aside from the other podcasts. If you stick with it, and you enjoy it, then I have achieved what I set out to do, to entertain, tell a story, immerse an audience, and share my love of D&D. Once again, thanks for listening, and without further ado, let's get on with the show. The following podcast is for a mature audience and contains detailed descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to the Tales of Mystara podcast, an experimental podcast that mixes traditional storytelling with old-school pen and paper role-playing games played entirely solo. This could be considered a dark fantasy novel or a solo Dungeons and Dragons campaign. If treated like a novel, then nothing can be assumed. Only the dice can determine the outcome. It cannot be known whether a character will live or die. Nothing is precious. No one is safe from the roll of the dice. If treated like a tabletop role-playing game, there are no players. There is no dungeon master. There is only me, the rules, and the dice. A century ago, Traldar was well known for its trade, particularly in Marilenov, its chief city, built where the Volga River enters the sea. There, Traldarans traded valuable furs for weapons, wines, and other spirits. Most of the profits from this enterprise stayed on the coast and the immediate inland. Few traders ventured further, but those that did included a well-known armed force of gnomes known as the annual Gnome Caravan, who descended from the northern hills to trade a year's accumulation of craft goods in Marilenov before making their way back to gnomish lands. The Dark Age of the Traldar, a forgotten text written by a nameless scholar of the Church of Karameikos. Its age is unknown. Date: Solidane 7, Claremont, AC 1000. Time: 5:53 PM. Party status: Claudius 4 hit points, Theodore 4 hit points, Elmo 5 hit points, Ilyana 2 hit points, Yolanda 4 hit points. The party is in a 20-foot wide passage that leads right at a 45-degree angle. They carefully continue along for a turn. Ilyana lets out a groan of pain. "She's not doing well," Elmo says, but as Claudius and Yolanda look to her, she gives a dismissive wave of her hand. Wandering monster check. No wandering monsters. The party comes to a door. Yolanda attempts to listen. She doesn't hear anything. Ilyana easily opens the door. Beyond the door is an oval-shaped room about 90 square feet in diameter, which has 3 exits, 2 doors opposite the entrance, and another door on the left. Yolanda lets out a frustrated sigh at the realization that all the options are leading the party further away from Theodore, who fell through a collapsing floor somewhere on the level above. "We should go back," Elmo says. Ilyena doesn't look good." "I'll be fine." Yolanda inspects the right side of the room to see if there is any way through. "Bingo," she says as she pushes on a loose stone. There is a loud grating sound before the wall shifts to reveal a secret doorway, but no sooner than it opens, Yolanda's torch flame gives up and she is forced to light another. Through the doorway is a rectangular 10-foot by 20-foot room. There are further doors to the left and right. The party must go right to move closer to Theodore. The party moves through the room and to the door to the right. As usual, Yolanda presses an ear to the door to listen. She doesn't hear anything. Ilyena tries to open the door. It's a cinch. Beyond the door is a tiny 10-foot by 10-foot room with a door immediately to the right. No wandering monsters appear. Once again, Yolanda listens but hears nothing, and Ilyena tries but fails to open the stuck door. On the second attempt, she manages. Beyond the door is another 45-degree passage, which runs parallel to the previous one encountered. "We're heading in the right direction," says Yolanda. But before long, the passage opens out into a 20-foot by 20-foot chamber with 2 passages leading from the left wall, once again taking the party away from Theodore. The party takes the northernmost of the 2 passages. "We can't afford to get lost down here," says Yolanda. They are still safe from any wandering monsters. The passage suddenly curves left into a very narrow 5-foot space, which forces the characters into a single file. The narrow passage then turns 45 degrees to the right after 20 feet, and suddenly, from a shallow alcove on the left wall of the narrow passage wall, out of the darkness, a man over 6 feet tall comes into the light, wearing black robes, taking Yolanda by surprise. She lets out a gasp. "Bargle," she says. Then she realizes it's a statue. A crystal statue. Feeling relieved, the party takes a turn to rest. The rest is not interrupted by monsters. However, as the party are resting by the crystal statue, it reaches out from the alcove in an attempt to seize Ilyena. Stay tuned to find out what happens next. Claudius Tagaris is a human cleric of lawful alignment who resides from a wealthy but entitled Thyacian family from the city of Kelvin, the second largest city in Karameikos. Claudius's family have never suffered from want. They own a large property within the city's inner walls and earned their wealth from trade due to Claudius's father, Velimir Tagaris, being a talented merchant. Claudius grew up confined here, as he was a sickly child who spent most of his early years bedridden and waited on by the servants of the house. He spent much of his time studying the doctrine of the Church of Karameikos, the famous writing called The Song of King Halav, and old stories about the immortals. When he was old enough, he devoted himself to the church fully as a cleric, believing the immortals directly responsible for his body growing stronger and more able as he came of age. Claudius's ultimate goal is to be a member of the Order of the Griffin, a military order of the Church of Karameikos, so he can repay the immortals for their blessings. Claudius is a wise man of very few words, with a pale complexion and general unhealthy countenance. He strives to act in what he considers to be the best interests of his fellow citizens, which is why his hunt for Bargle the Wizard in order to avenge the murder of a fellow cleric, Alina Halloran, is so important to him. Not only will it avenge the church, but will ensure justice prevails in Threshold in support of its ruler, Shirlane Halloran, the father of Alina. This deed will also impress him upon the Order of the Griffin. Claudius is 5 foot 11 inches tall, about average for a Thyacian male. He has dark blonde hair, grey eyes, and a fairly tanned complexion from general exposure to the sun. He wears a full-sleeved, floor-length gown with the arms of the Church of Karameikos displayed prominently on the chest. The coat of arms depicts a sun in the top left corner, the sceptre in the middle, and a moon in the bottom right. He also wears a badge on his shoulder which proclaims his membership to the Church of Karameikos, and at his side he carries a clerical sceptre on his belt, designating his profession. For more information, which includes illustrations and character record sheets for my characters, please visit solodungeoncrawler.blogspot.com. Ilyena will need to perform a dexterity ability check to escape the statue's grasp. She is successful, and the statue's arms fail to wrap around her. She is too quick. "A living statue," Claudius says. "Run!" Elmo screams. The party will attempt to evade the living crystal statue. The statue will perform a morale check to see if it decides to pursue. The statue will pursue them. I will now roll on the evasion table. The party has a 50% chance to evade. Success. The passage seems to continue on endlessly as the characters run. They pass many more alcoves containing the same living crystal statues. Eventually, they slow down to normal speed to gather their bearings. Yolanda uses up another torch as they wander along. After 2 turns, the party comes to a dead end. I will now roll to see if a wandering monster blocks them in. Lucky for them, nothing appears. Yolanda will attempt to find a secret door along the narrow passage as she leads the party back the way they came. Each 10 feet of wall space will take a whole turn to search, and every 2 turns I will perform a wandering monster check. Yolanda attempts to find a secret door. She searches a 10-foot area of wall space, but she finds nothing. She moves along the narrow passage and tries a little further back the way they came. Nothing. She lets out a sigh of frustration. Fortunately, the party is not disturbed by a wandering monster. They will keep moving back the way they came as Yolanda attempts to search for a secret door. No such luck. Bingo, Yolanda says, as a clicking sound is followed by a grinding of stone on stone as a panel in the passage shifts into the floor. The dust clears, revealing darkness beyond. The party will move into this darkness in single file. No other choice, Yolanda says as she disappears into the blackness. As she does this, Claudius's lantern burns out. Darn! Claudius is out of oil. Elmo lights a torch and passes it to Claudius, and the party enter into the secret doorway. Beyond the secret doorway is a room, rectangular 20 feet by 40 feet. There is one exit. It is a door on the opposite wall. The room is empty. The party makes for the door. They are becoming restless, frustrated. Yolanda attempts to open the door. It opens easily. Beyond the door is another room, a perfect 20 by 20 foot square with 2 exits, opposite wall and right wall. Without wasting time, they keep moving as quickly as possible. Yolanda leading the way. She has a general sense of where Fyodor may be located. She heads east towards the door on the opposite wall, and she pushes against it. It opens. Beyond is a large rectangular room lined with thick stone pillars. Dust and debris are scattered about, and on the far wall, lying unconscious, is Fyodor. His eyes are closed, but he is still breathing.
It was lovely of him to drop in.
A voice reaches out from the darkness.
Bargle the infamous,
Claudius says with a mock tone. A tall, thin man over 6 feet steps into the light of the lantern, which illuminates an angelic face with deep black eyes, umber hair, and a flowing umber beard. A deceptively handsome and charming man, his evil betrayed by his flowing black robes. Claudius draws his mace and points it in the direction of Bargle.
You murdered Alina Halloran. She will be avenged. Your cheap magic tricks will not harm me, because my gods protect me, for I am here to do the bidding of the Church of Karameikos.
I hope he's not just saying that, Elmo mutters to himself.
Everyone leave, Claudius says. This is between me and him.
Elmo hesitates, aware of how hurt Ilyena is. We can't leave him, Ilyena says, knowing what Elmo is thinking. Yolanda rolls her eyes. The party prepares for battle. Just then, Claudius tosses a small sack on the floor at Bargle's feet.
Take that in exchange for the life of my friends. A trade. They have helped me come this far, but they need have no part in this. Let them go.
Bargle glances curiously at the sack. Will he accept the offer? If not, are they any match for the mighty Bargle, the infamous magic user? Is Claudius's faith enough to ensure his survival against this dangerous foe? And if so, what of the rest of the party? Will anyone survive this deadly encounter? Stay tuned. Now, let's get into this episode's listener correspondence. I've got a fair bit to choose from because of a 5-month hiatus. I'm going to start with Tom Lespisa from YouTube. He said, "Hey Tom, a fellow Tom here, I've really enjoyed this podcast and wow, you've put in a lot of quality effort into this. The music and sound effects really sell it. I can also tell you're getting more comfortable with the narration and delivering it more naturally. As another listener said at one point, I'm really not a fan of the monotone delivery more prominent in the early episodes. As a matter of fact, your natural speaking voice and tonality is far more pleasant. But I'm glad you are continuing to do this, and I'm still enjoying the content, so thank you for making it. My favourite part is how close you stick to the rules. It's like a living time capsule for BECMI. I'm sure you've gotten more than enough criticism, so I want to encourage you to keep it up. Can't wait for the next episode. In response to Tom, thanks for being honest. I guess with a lot of things, practice makes perfect, and I hope I'm getting better at this as it goes along. Thank you for the encouragement too, and I hope you've enjoyed this episode, which has been a long time coming. On iTunes, Maureen said, "This podcast is really well done. It's fascinating and wonderful to listen to. It's very inspiring." Thanks, Maureen. I'm absolutely flattered that you find this podcast inspiring. Thank you for the 5-star review. It really helps. It really helps a lot. So that's it for this episode's listener correspondence. Join me next episode and I'll pick out 1 or 2 more. Have a great week, everyone. You have been listening to the Tales of Mystara podcast. I sincerely hope you have enjoyed this episode. If you have listened on YouTube, then I would appreciate you taking the time to subscribe, click the like button, and let me know your thoughts in a comment. If you have listened on iTunes, then I would appreciate it if you would leave a 5-star review. These things really help, and they let me know that the work I put into this podcast is worth it, and that I am making content that people like. After all, that's why I'm doing this. Once again, thanks for listening. I'll see you next session.